Great. So as I mentioned, what we're going to cover for the first half hour, I'm going to give a brief overview about Outride, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues, Andy Cunningham and Lauren Freeman, who oversee our Outride Fund and Riding for Focus, respectively. And then the second half will be Q&A, and we'll get you wrapped up. We're committed to keeping ourselves on track. Next slide. Great. So for those of you who are not familiar with Outride, we began in 2012 with an observation by our co-founder, Mike Sinyard, that he felt a lot more focused after a bike ride. He has ADHD. So he commissioned a group of neuroscientists to do a study, and the results were indisputable. They demonstrated that after kids started riding, the experience positively altered their brain activity, increased their attention spans, boosted their moods, and of course, improved fitness. Inspired by those results, Mike launched the Specialized Foundation. I should note he is also the CEO of the Specialized Foundation. In 2014, we created the Riding for Focus program as a result of our research, and the research continues to play a very significant role in our work. So Outride was founded on the belief that cycling and well-being are connected, and this belief has fueled our research and our programs for the last 20 years. We've granted Riding for Focus to more than 200 schools across the US and Canada, impacting over 50,000 youth annually. Oh, next slide, Leanne. Sorry about that. And in 2019, we became an independent 501c3. We are still very closely tied to our friends at Specialized, but we are now an independent charity, and we added our third program component, the Outride Fund, to support our new riders outside of school and focus initially on youth education, rider development, bike parks, trails, and pump tracks. And to date, we've granted over 500K to over 75 community programs across the US. Next slide, please. So we're continuing to evolve, building on what we've learned through our research and what we intuitively know and is well represented in our research and in others. Simply put, that cycling has a positive impact on your cognitive, emotional, and physical well-being. We drafted this statement shortly after I came on as this summer, and it's really a notation that we really believe in the power of bicycles to promote change. And so we believe that every young person deserves a safe place to ride and access to the resources, support, and mentors to make cycling a part of their lives. And yet 2020 illuminated and laid bare some of the greatest inequities in our communities. Disparities in opportunity, health outcome, access, and these are a direct result of the legacy of discrimination and racism that we're still battling in the US. We believe deeply that bikes can play a significant role in healing. What we've learned and what we've seen is that community power and connection come through bikes and bring people together. We also have seen the power of local communities to address and bring people together. And we see Outride as being a partner in these efforts and are bringing together what we've learned in our research, our programming through Riding for Focus, and our Outride Fund grants. We're committed to making cycling more accessible, equitable, and inclusive, and really hope that you're going to be a part of our mission. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Andy, with the next slide to give you a little bit more background about his work and the role of the Outride Fund.
Thanks so much, Guy, and thank you all for taking time out of your evenings, wherever you are, to join us on behalf of the kids of your community. So I'm Andy Cunningham. I'm the program manager for the Outride Fund, one of those 3 programs that Outride operates. And one of the things I'm going to start with is talking about some similarities this year around with us running 2 grant cycles concurrently. So for the first time, we're running our Outride Fund winter round alongside our annual Riding for Focus school grant. And so some dates that you're likely aware of, having made it to this call, is that the application window is January 11th through March 11th. And then for each of those grants, one, we need to see all of the basic information that we'll get into more on this webinar about what kind of organization you are and some of those administrative tasks. But each of those grants also very really considers the needs of the community. So we want to be making grants, both these matching cash grants, as well as the grants of our curriculum and bikes, to programs where kids don't typically have that access. Also, each of these grants, even though they work on their own review period and have their own review committees, notification of grant decisions will follow about 1.5 months or so after that application deadline. So for each of these, you should expect to hear back about the outcome of your grant application in sort of mid to late April. And then for Riding for Focus, one of the things, even if you're, say, a NICA coach or a trail builder that's on this call, you will have another chance to reapply if it doesn't go so well for you this summer. But for middle schools, this is the one chance they have to apply for a Riding for Focus program all year long. So take your trail building hat off, put on your just cycling advocate hat, and go share this grant opportunity with the local middle schools in your community. That way we can all work together to build, a stronger cycling ecosystem. That way there are more kids in your community to come out and ride those trails. So again, we will run a summer and a winter Outride Fund grant application window. Riding for Focus is one time a year. Leanne, next slide, please. Some general things to consider with Outride grants, and Sky hit on this. But first of all, we want to build relationships. We're a relational organization. We aren't looking at just having a transaction. And so one of the things that you should ask yourself as a leader of your organization and in your community is, are you aligned with the mission, vision, and the purpose of the granting organization, in this case, Outride? So read over the statements that we've posted. Once you get into the application, you'll see a common section within SurveyMonkey Apply, the application portal, that will have you answer some eligibility questions. If your organization is not inclusive and welcoming when it comes to volunteers or employment, Outride may not be a great fit for you. Another thing that we're looking for is for organizations, for cyclists, for leaders within cycling who are willing to be bold, be those leaders, and be inclusive. So be solutions oriented. What sort of problem exists within your community, and how is your program specifically looking to address this issue and overcome it? And I would say, again, one thing that at this point we should all realize, we all can do more, can do better. And I would say one of those things is, it's not good enough anymore to be passively open and inclusive. We want you to be assertive and, again, be that leader. And so as you think about applying for a grant, statements like, we build trails and anyone is welcome to use our trails, or I've got a NICA team and anyone is welcome to join my team, that's not really good enough anymore. We want to see from you, what's your plan to actually actively increase that? Are you going to go out and recruit more diverse coaches and female coaches so that those young girls in your community feel like they're welcome on your team? Are you going to engage with local community partners that get sort of a new group involved in cycling in your community than what you would typically see on your local group ride? And going along with that is have a plan. Present some quantitative data. Currently only 20% of our team are girls. With this grant, we intend to grow female ridership by X percentage. To achieve this, we will, and then there's your plan. So think about how you can, one, build a plan that makes you a strong applicant, and then also, once you've been awarded the grant and you go out and do what you said you were going to do, success breeds success. So when you go to apply for that second grant, you can say, last year when we got an Outride Fund, we were successful in doubling the number of girls, or increasing the socioeconomic status inclusion for students who couldn't afford a bike by having loaner bikes. Next slide, please, Leanne. So as Sky mentioned, a year ago, when we transitioned from the Specialized Foundation, a private corporate nonprofit, to Outride, a public 501c3, we realized that, in addition to being bigger than just focus problems and ADHD, all kids are out riding something. And one challenge for a lot of kids is, where do they ride and how do they ride outside of school? And so with that, we launched the Outride Fund. And it's one part fundraising platform and one part matching grant, which helps local organizations like yours build the next generation of riders where they are. We provide these dollar-for-dollar matching grants to communities across various areas, which include youth rider development, programs like USAC, NICA, Little Bellas, Major Taylor, bike co-ops and Earn a Bike programs, trail, pump track, and bike and skills development of parks, as well as youth cycling education programs. These grants provide new opportunities to support and grow inclusive cycling communities. Some general things to know about the Outride Fund: it is a competitive grant. So while we welcome any community organization to use our fundraising tool, and dollars that you raise on the platform are restricted for your project, the actual matching component of that is competitive, and the matching grant is only secured upon a successful application to the Outride Fund. Next slide, please, Lynn. Some general application tips. Again, are you eligible? So who are we looking to partner with here? Schools, nonprofits. We can also partner with city governments. So if you have a city parks and recreation department, that will also work. For some NICA teams that haven't set up a bank account or haven't actually incorporated into their own organization, finding a partner like a local bike co-op or not-for-profit or even a retail shop that can act as a fiscal sponsor is a way of getting a payout of those funds. But we do not make grants to individuals. The second application tip is highlight your existing outputs and impacts in your application materials. Tell us how many students you currently work with and sort of what the level of your engagement with those students are. We consider both the breadth and the depth of the programming that you do and you provide when we look at how our investment of a matching grant is going to impact your ability to do work in your community. Specify how the funds that you're requesting will make a difference in your community. Be concise, but make sure that you actually give us a description so that we know what kind of program it is that you offer kids in your community. And if possible, provide a brief testimonial from a student or a participant or a parent. That can have a lot of impact for us in letting us know the kind of work that you're doing and how you're reaching students. And then again, if you do not have sort of your financial house in order, make sure you have that fiscal sponsor that is. So in the past, again, we've seen local, larger established organizations step up, or a local trail organization that's willing to receive funds and manage that for a local NICA team or something like that. Next slide, please. So the Outride Fund, it's got a new look to it this year. This is on the main outridebike.org website. If you navigate to the overview tab of the Outride Fund, you will find all of this information there. I encourage you to go and visit that. And once I'm done with my portion, I'll pop those links into the chat box. Essentially, though, it's a three-step process. Step one is starting a fundraiser using our Classy campaign. We'll go into that in more detail in a moment here. Step two is going back and taking that step of applying for the matching grant, SurveyMonkey Apply. You can invite a collaborator, so that way you can bring somebody else in to help you if you don't have information about like the demographics of your local population. Maybe you invite someone from a local school to help you with that information. And then once you've taken those two steps, now you go out there and you spread the word. Classy is a peer-to-peer fundraising page. Your organization can submit dollars offline via checks. If you've already raised some money, you can contribute those over and convert them to match eligible dollars. Outride does have to hold the money that we match, but that link, that donation link that you can then share on your social media or in your newsletter is something where it's really powerful because you can go forth and say, go out and do this ride to support our group and then donate $1 for every mile that you ride. So sharing that campaign broadly can bring in new dollars and help you earn the matching grant that hopefully you're receiving from the Outride Fund. Next slide, please, Lynn. So this past fall, we wrapped up our first full year of the Outride Fund, and during that time, we had 3 rounds of the Outride Fund. And as Sky mentioned, we awarded over $514,000 to 76 organizations across 30 states. I know this graphic is a bit small here, but you see how we grew from our inaugural round in the fall of 2019, awarding $111,000 in matching grants to $150,000 awarded last spring, and $253,000 awarded this most recent fall as part of our summer fall round. You can see these awards differed based on the sort of category, again, youth rider development, trails, or youth cycling education. We've now added the Earn a Bike co-op side. If you look back historically, trail and bike park grants have averaged about $9,000. Those youth cycling education grants have also been around $9,000 per award. And the youth rider development grants that are NICA, USAC club teams have been closer to $4,000. Again, you can request anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000 of matching grant. Our grant committee will then decide how much of that we're awarding, whether it's the full match that you're asking or a partial match. And in any case, whatever grant you are offered, you just have to earn up to that amount to earn that amount payoff. There's more details about that in the FAQ on the main website. I encourage you to look that over, and it gives out some different scenarios. If you were awarded $10,000, but you raised $12,000, you would earn dollar for dollar up to that $10,000. Anything over that, you still get paid out, but it's unmatched. Next slide, please, Ian. So that brings us to step one, which again is starting that Classy page. When you navigate from our main page, you can click through directly and it'll take you to our Classy homepage. And you can essentially click right there on start a campaign, or you can come down and click on one of these examples of a program. Either way, that's going to put you into the path to creating a Classy account and starting a fundraiser. Again, you see there on the right a little more about who we are and what kind of programs we're looking to support. So again, check that for your alignment. And you can also click through to the FAQs. So take this step, start a fundraising, and then you'll come back and do the matching grant part next. Next slide, Leon. Also on that main Classy page, you can navigate down, and this is how, if you don't share that link and make it easy, people can still come and find your program. If they know, oh, I know, I'm gonna say Dave D here with the Pat's hat. I know he's doing something with Outride and Classy. Let me go to their site and I'll search for the name of his organization. You can type that in here, pop up, and then click directly through. You can also, for any of you that are looking to start a page, I encourage you to go play around and look at these and see what kind of information and assets other organizations have come on and brought to the table to then set this page up. On the right side, you'll see essentially what the pre-form template looks like. So regardless of whether you have an executive director and 10 employees, or you are the person who's wearing all of the hats all of the time, your fundraising page is going to look the same on the Outride Fund Classy site in terms of having a branded professional template. You can come on here, you set the fundraising name. The default will be your individual personal name. Change that to the name of your organization to make it really clear that when someone clicks on this, they're not fundraising for Sky Delano, they're fundraising for Outride. You can then, in the preloaded text there, tell us about your organization and about the specific project, if there's a specific project that you're seeking to fundraise for. And then there'll also be some information there for your donors about Outride. The cool thing about this is when somebody comes on and makes a donation, those dollars are restricted to your project, but they also immediately get a tax-deductible receipt from Outride as a 501c3. At the end of the day, all of those dollars are then pooled, and that's the pocket of money that's match eligible to get paid out to your project. But it makes it really simple because you only have to give me your vendor and banking information and W-9 tax information. You don't have to deal with each individual small donation that comes in. For any of those big donors, again, I always encourage the offline check donation. That way there aren't any of the online transaction fees that are taken via Classy. Classy's fees are lower, I think it's about 3.5%, and many of our donors elect to actually pay that fee on your behalf. Next slide, please, Sam. Again, here are a few examples of what some different fundraising pages have looked like. Outcycling Fearless Flyers program in New York City raised over, I think it was $27,000, including the matching grant from Outride. And you can see they were able to add in a YouTube video and things like that. So again, it's really easy once you're in there to add photos, add linked videos, and you end up with a very professional looking website. This center photo here shows what you'll see as the person who's managing this account. So what kind of info you can put in. You can also create a vanity URL, which will be give.classy/, and then you can put a name in there. And that just looks really good for like any flyers that you're putting out or stickers, things that you want someone to navigate to rather than the longer URL with the full number. So a couple of different ways of customizing it for you. Obviously, you can customize your photo as well. And then as people donate, you can go in and thank them for their donations and interact that way. Next slide. So that essentially is step one. You've set up Classy. To be honest, setting up a Classy account and fundraising page takes about 5 minutes. Obviously, I encourage you to spend more time customizing it and really telling us about your program and the text, but it's a very easy step. Step two is going to be clicking through to that SurveyMonkey apply link. Again, you can find this on the main Classy site or on Outride's main website. Step two, you're going to go apply for a matching grant. On SurveyMonkey apply, the nice thing about this, it's the same application process for Riding for Focus. Lauren will detail more of that in her section. The first thing that you'll do for either of them is our eligibility quiz. It's 5 quick questions, and then that will invite you to submit an application. For the Outride Fund, the full application This is just the overview and what you would see within your SurveyMonkey Apply dashboard. And again, you can save this and come back to it or invite collaborators, but it's going to ask you common application questions, which will be the same for Writing for Focus programs. This is, your address, your organization name, things like that. And then for the Outride Fund specifically, it's also going to ask you about the overview of your program. It's going to ask you for that Classy link that you just set up for your fundraising page that can link the two things. It's going to ask you about the community that you serve, as well as your operations, your program. We do welcome applications for general operating funds. So for any of your organizations that do need unrestricted funds, we respect your ability to identify the needs of your community and how you can best adapt to serving that community. And so we do allow for those unrestricted operating funds as well. That said, it's also great if you have a specific project in mind, like that bike park. Tell us all about that project or that program if you're doing something like that as well. Next slide, please, Leanne. And then there is, within SurveyMonkey Apply, there's a link to download a budget. The primary budget template that you'll see, which is this one here on the right, is just a sample budget. Your budget can look different from this. At the top, essentially, there is a section of income. This was based on a NICA readiness budget. And so it's great for sort of a youth cycling team or an organization that sort of has one flavor. For a more complex organization like Outride, your budget's going to be a bit more detailed. But at the end of the day, break it down into income and expenses for us. It's also hard for you to see here, but there's a green line on the income that shows an estimated $3,000 of a grant from Outride. And then these red lines that you see in the expenses are showing us where those Outride dollars will be spent. So if your project or your program can give us that level of detail, please do. And it's great to see, when dollars are being spent on things like loaner bikes. That said, if your organization is asking for general operating budget, you can provide more overall operating dollars and budgets for your organization. Be specific when you can. One final thing that I'll say, sort of related to trails and pump tracks, again, knowing that those can be, trail projects especially, can be very expensive. One of the things that Outride is really favoring when we see trail projects are those trail projects that are built in places near schools and near where kids are. So while we will still consider funding for trail projects, those applications that are looking at a skills trail or a beginner trail or a pump track right next to a school are probably going to be looked upon a little more favorably than the backcountry trail where you need a mom and dad with a truck to drag you and your full suspension bike out there, which is just not accessible for most kids. So we welcome those applications, but again, you better have a good plan for how you're making that project more accessible for the communities that don't typically have access to that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, and I'll just add that the FAQ questions on the website, a lot of the things that you may have may be there. If not, feel free to reach out via email or with the chat box below.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lauren Freeman, and I am the Writing for Focus Program Manager. Super exciting to be in a room full of bike advocates. We have 78 folks online, and that's super exciting. I know everyone's coming in from all over the nation and working towards the same thing, which is getting more butts on bikes and improving our infrastructure and our safety and our communities and well-being. So it's super awesome. So we're going to switch gears literally from our Outride Fund to talking about Writing for Focus. If you have any questions, please continue to post them in our chat. And when I'm done with my slide, we will open it up for more questions and answers. So thank you so much for sticking with us. So Writing for Focus is our school-based physical education program that uses cycling education as an outlet for students to improve their cognitive, physical, and socio-emotional well-being. This program is designed for middle school age youth and on developing traffic safety skills and cycling skills. So in case you're wondering how our programs are different between the Outride Fund and the Writing for Focus, like Andy has mentioned, Writing for Focus is for middle schools. We say PE, physical education, because oftentimes Writing for Focus is implemented by the physical education teacher at a middle school, and they are often the implementer of the program during class time hours. Just a little differentiation. Can I go to the next slide, Leanne? Thank you. So since 2014, we've had great success. We've had 250 instructors trained in almost 44 states, in 200 schools, and roughly 50,000 students annually. Next slide. And from those statistics, we have learned a lot. We have learned that 90% of students report having fun in the program, and that we are able to get kids' heart rates pumping with increased physical activity. Parts of the Writing for Focus curriculum does include monitoring heart rate, which is super helpful for PE instructors who are looking to get kids more physically active in a way that's moderate to high or vigorous physical activity. We've also seen that schools have had positive effects for attendance, behavior, and we have seen improved self-esteem and academic performance. Also, we all know that once we get a student on bike, they're more often more interested in becoming lifelong adult cyclists and continue to ride outside of the class. Next slide, Leanne. So when speaking about Writing for Focus in comparison to US population census, we have found that Writing for Focus has increased diversity and inclusion in many aspects, including race, ethnicity, but also for schools who have free or reduced lunch rates and schools who have heavy IEP plans, individual education plans. We've also increased gender diversity with 40% of Writing for Focus schools with having female participants, which is what we're all here to do, to increase inclusivity and diversity in ridership and in our cycling communities. Next slide. This map here shows 2020 Writing for Focus schools, and as you can see that we have some in Canada. So we're definitely looking to expand Writing for Focus in those gaps that we see on our picture here. If you are one of those gaps, please let us know, and we are happy to be working with you. Next slide. So to obtain Writing for Focus, we have two pathways. One is to purchase the program outright. This program has been designed to serve primarily low income, low socioeconomic status, rural, urban, BIPOC, people of color communities. But in case you are not one of those communities, you can also purchase a program. But in the event that you do purchase a program or are awarded a grant, we will provide you with everything that you need to get your 6th, 7th, and 8th graders riding bikes, including the curriculum, which is a 12-lesson curriculum, helmets, the bikes, and an intensive teacher training to help you implement the program. The curriculum is actually has been uploaded online, so the instructor will go through the online curriculum themselves, and then they will, attend a one-day training face-to-face virtually to go over the curriculum with other folks who have been awarded the Writing for Focus. Next slide. So some things for you to consider if you are a middle school looking to apply for Writing for Focus. One is that we are asking for you to have a designated core team. And as I mentioned before, the Writing for Focus is a PE curriculum. So oftentimes we have found that the PE instructor is the core person, is a point of contact between myself, the Outride team, the school, and the students. This person is also the person who is helping the administrator, who is another core element, core person on the team, sign the school program agreement. And also the person who is helping get the community involved and getting bike shops involved, bike co-ops, any kind of cycling groups in your area, aware and knowledgeable of the amazing impacts of Writing for Focus on your school and in your neighborhood. This core team is often the prime advocates and those that really push forward the success of the program in the school, but also more importantly into the community grounds and the neighborhoods. In terms of implementation, we do recommend that the implementer, the prime person involved, implements the curriculum for at least 6 weeks, 3 times a day, and for 20 minutes each time. And we understand that this is not a requirement, but it is a recommendation because we have noticed effects of the program being ideal at those rates. But like we have said earlier, that Writing for Focus is a turnkey yet flexible program. So we want you to adapt the program to your needs and to your class size, to weather, to COVID. We want to be flexible and support you and how you are going to implement the program. And so there is a lot of flexibility in terms of implementation. We also ask you to have a cycling sustainability plan. So in the event that the prime implementer is no longer able to implement the program, that there is a plan B. There is a 2-year requirement minimum to implement the program. And so we ask that you have a first person involved to implement the program. And if they are no longer able to do the service, that there is somebody else who is ready and trained and can easily move into this position in the event that the first person can no longer do that. So that is what a cycling sustainability plan is. Fourth on our list, we have safe riding opportunities. We understand that not all schools are equipped with safe routes outside of their school or bike lanes or sidewalks. But we do ask you to consider maybe an empty parking lot, an empty tennis court, an empty field, a basketball court, some kind of area where you can have students safely riding in circuits. In the Writing for Focus program, we offer many exercises, and at the end of the program, we have a final exam circuit where students are tested to become road ready. It's like a driving class, essentially. So each week, students are learning a new skill, and at the end of the curriculum, we ask them to implement all the skills into one exercise where they are cycling in a circuit and practicing all the different skills that they have learned in the 12 weeks. So we need an area that's safe enough and big enough for at least 30 students or however students you have in your class. And that's definitely something to be considered. And then finally, equipment storage plan. Unfortunately, at Outride, we cannot replace any bikes that may get stolen. So we ask that you seriously consider how you're going to store your bikes. Bikes do take up room, but we have seen some schools do amazing things and be really creative in how they store their bikes and are efficient and well kept. We estimate that a bike will last up to 10 years with consistent and diligent maintenance. And if kids are riding in a moderate way, the bikes will last a long time. So if you have your bikes in a storage area that's safe, we hope that you can implement the program for longer than 2 years. Next slide. So in talking about success, we have seen that most schools that are the most successful, or the schools that are most successful, are those that really have established a bike ecosystem. A school that is very embedded in all the different bike clubs, bike shops, bike organization, bike advocacy groups around their neighborhoods in order to really uplift youth cycling into the hearts and minds of those who maybe don't know what's going on with youth cycling, which, as we all know, is a lot. So we really encourage staff to get involved in the community, talk to other bike advocates, policymakers, bike shops, and really get the word out and encourage our youth to ride outside of school grounds and in their neighborhoods and communities in a way that's safe. Next slide. So in speaking of the grant, if your schools were to be accepted, you would be provided the program curriculum. Like I said, is a 12-week curriculum. It's flexible, it's turnkey, and it's designed to meet national standards for physical education. We will provide the online curriculum, but also the fleet of bikes and helmets and any kind of assistance or support that you would need outside of the award to be successful, which is a lot of communication with myself and my team. Next slide. And similar to Andy's Outride Fund, we have a SurveyMonkey Apply platform, and folks are asked to go through a series of eligibility questions, and there's school ability to implement and program support questions. And at the end, there is an optional video or PowerPoint submission if you choose to upload something for us to get to know you a little bit better, to get to know your school and your circumstances. That is there for your upload. Next slide. There you go. So right here, you can see just a little snapshot of the SurveyMonkey Apply platform where folks can go and apply for the Writing for Focus. You can just come over here and click apply, log in, register, and start your application. Next slide. Here's an example of a screenshot of some of the eligibility questions similar to the Outride Fund that will help you navigate to see if our program best suits your needs and if this will be a good fit. Next slide. And here are 5 different components to our SurveyMonkey Apply. We have a common application, the school partner details, student and PE profile, program logistics and support, and supplemental materials. So it is a 5-component application on the SurveyMonkey Apply. Next slide. Thank you. So after you submit the application, what's next? As you all know, the application will close on March 11th. So after that, we will collect the applications and score, make committee decisions, and notify schools who have been awarded. After you have received your application acceptance, we will have a series of onboarding tasks, which will include like I mentioned, the program, the Writing for Focus program implementer, the PE teacher, whomever that person is, will be in touch with me a lot at this point of time, where we will be sending out press release, a media packet, welcome webinars. We will be working with you and your school administrative staff to get their program agreement signed. And the LMS enrollment is the online curriculum. You will be enrolled into this platform and go through the online 12 lessons at a self-paced. And then finally, after your self-paced, we will be working together to get you your bikes and helmet delivery to your local bike shop. And then finally, we will schedule a online webinar training for all the awardees to gather together and review the Writing for Focus curriculum face-to-face together. And we have a program start of September with that. And Leanne, I think that's the end of my slide here. I want to thank you all, and I hope that we were able to answer some of your questions, but in case you have any lingering thoughts, we will now open up the meeting for questions. Thank you.
See, I think one of the questions that came up is whether or not multiple schools can apply together. And so I'll just hop on this one since Lauren just spoke a bunch. So one of the things to remember is once we grant the bikes and the helmets out, we're granting them to the school and they're no longer possession of Outride. So when it comes to whether or not bikes can be shared between schools, that's not a decision that we can make because they are no longer our bikes. And also the school that receives them are now responsible for liability and things like that. So the one way that something like that could work is if it's like the superintendent or someone at the school board level, like a district coordinator that applies, and it's the school district organization that takes ownership of them and can move them around. But typically we encourage the schools to make as much use of the bikes as possible, whether that's after school clubs, using them as loaner bikes for their NICA team. In terms of what kind of bikes they are a mountain bike. So they have a 1x in the front, no front derailleur. So one less derailleur to worry about. Disc brakes, but they are mechanical disc brakes. So they are wired disc brakes, which means when your kid's doing a really cool stunt without your permission and they rip out a brake line, you're now just rerunning a mechanical line. You're not paying to have it replumbed and all of that kind of stuff. So we've intentionally built a fleet bike that can sort of take the abuse of middle schoolers and should last 10 years with basic maintenance. They also have a numbered seat post, and the actual sizing is color coded. So for me as a short guy, I walk up and I get sized day one, and I remember I'm a green 4. So green is that small medium, and then I put the seat post with a quick release to a 4, and now it's ready to ride for that PE teacher. So your kids are very quickly ready to grab a bike and go, and not looking for the size sticker that got scratched off and things like that.
So does this program work more as an in-school program, or would it also work as an after-school like club program?
Well, we want to see the best implementation from our side is the PE program, and part of that's because of the potential impact. When you have 30 bikes in a middle school that has 6 periods, there's the potential for that larger school that they're doing in 6 periods, 30 kids, 180 kids a quarter. And you can imagine then in the second quarter doing another 180 kids. So that one fleet of bikes can serve, over 720 kids in one school year. And you can imagine that over the 10 year of the program. It's great if they then want to run an after school program as well. But typically with after school programs, we see it's the same 15 kids that come each time. So there's some flexibility for the right sort of after school program that we're open to, but we tend to favor those implementations as PE because of the broad impact that it can have. Anything you want to add, Sky or Lauren, to that?
No, I think that would be good. I mean, I think it was a good summary. If there are specific circumstances, feel free to also email us afterwards. We can talk through some of the specific details. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And then is there like a list of the program? How would, say, a community partner like myself, and I'm already working with a school right now for an after school program, and then learned of this, how would I get this information to, say, my school contact, who would say, okay, well, what are they going to ask? They're going to say, well, how many bikes is there? I heard 30. Is that a thing?
That is about right. And they're first going to say, what's the catch? So if somebody wants to give us bikes. Hey, did you notice that there's a pandemic going on? You want us to add a new program when we can't even get our kids back to school? That's probably the second. And so encourage them to learn more and join a webinar. What we've said before is what Andy was describing is if it's possible for the school to apply and for you to negotiate the use afterwards, that's the ideal circumstance. We were able to successfully grant 44 programs last spring, train over 80 teachers this summer, and deliver the bikes to the schools, even though it was COVID. And we followed through on our promise and our commitment to them, even though none of them have been able to implement. So for our overwhelmed partners in schools, and we have the utmost respect for them, if they are at all interested, please encourage them to learn more. And then the sizing of the grants, 30 is sort of the average, but it depends on how many kids are using them. But the teacher to student ratio, it becomes a little bit both unwieldy and unsafe beyond kind of 30 bikes. So we look at like how many bikes could be used at a class period at a time.
And one other thing to add there, again, remind you that we're awarding these grants for next fall when it comes to Riding for Focus. Again, Outride Fund can sort of be at any point during the school year. And we have heard, because we have such a piecemeal approach to public health right now, where some states do have kids in programs, and existing Riding for Focus programs have told us in some cases that the Riding for Focus outside is the only PE thing that they can do, because they're outside, because they're socially distanced, because there are a certain number of touch points that you can sanitize between periods. So in some ways, it's something that we can look forward to, hopefully. Matt, I see that you've had your digital hand raised.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I kind of had it answered. I was actually going to ask Andy to what you were saying about, if schools did want to work to get, a school has to opt into this. I was just curious. I work for a Safe Routes to Schools program, and we go to, 58 schools in our county. If we could take ownership and then work with the different middle schools, but it sounds like that's not the preferred or not the possible route to go. It's for a specific school.
Matt, you're going to email us and we'll talk about what that might look like, and we'll talk about that in sort of like a case-by-case scenario. Sound good?
Okay. Cool. And then one other question, just because maybe someone else had this, with the Classy setting that up and everything, it seems like that's, 5 minutes, like you said, and then the grant a little bit longer, you may or may not get it. This may be a stupid question, but if any money raised just through Classy, that's good to go.
That's a great question. Yeah, anything that's raised on Classy, assuming that you are who you say you are, and you can get me the W-9 with the organization that isn't Matt Farber's bank account, yes, any funds you raise on that platform are restricted to your project. I will ask you, maybe you totally blew it on the application, you knew exactly where, and you're going to reapply in the summer, and you're like, let's just keep it going, I'm going to reapply. I didn't tell you about the thing that we're doing that's actually saving the world. But generally, we would then grant out the funds that you raised. And again, anything you raise is for your project.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Let's see.
Got a question?
Yep.
30 bikes for a PE class, one PE teacher. How's your curriculum handle 30 kids with one teacher?
This is the part where I would love to throw it to some of the things we actually have on here. But I'd say the first thing is that it's built up in stages. And so for those first sessions, it's not like, all right, everyone, let's ride down the hill. We're going around the football track. It literally starts off with 2 or 3 kids around a bike and looking at how to do an air brake, chain, cassette, ABC quick check. And then maybe it's working in small groups to do these first skills, to a cone and back. So you're building up to those larger rides on campus and actually building the skill and the confidence. And then it might be, for a Riding for Focus teacher, it might be that they're piloting this with 10 students. And then it's the second time they do it that they're doing it with 30 students.
Okay, yeah, I'm like a head coach. We do two coaches with 8 kids, and it's still kind of tough. So it was like 30 middle school kids and one teacher. I was like, whoa. Just I figured that my school might ask me when I approaches to them. Thanks.
Schools are rightfully and notoriously liability averse. I'll knock on wood, but one of the things that we say is essentially this Riding for Focus program, it's no more dangerous than really having the kids running the mile. There's the potential that a kid is going to run the mile and trip and fall on their wrist, or running cross country. They're talking to a friend and they run into a parked car. Essentially, we're talking about low speed, learning basic skills, cycling in the beginning where you're building those confidence. And so that's one of those things that you can also sort of help the school understand. Joshua, I see you've got a question.
Hey, yeah, so I work in approximately 8 school districts with about 120 students with developmental disabilities. And I'm always trying to increase opportunities for them to do stuff they've never done. So have you had any organizations that have really tried to zone in when you're thinking about the diversity angle, specifically on disabilities? Do you have any success stories with anybody really hitting that angle?
It's a great question, and I'll own that this is something that historically Outride has not been great about. It's something that we've talked a lot about, but we haven't come up with a elegant solution. One of the things that we have done, because even within our existing Riding for Focus bikes, we're giving a traditional young adult bike that doesn't have stabilizers, training wheels, things like that. One of the things that we did with the Outride Fund is we welcomed any of those Riding for Focus schools that have students with unique abilities who can't ride our bike, use an Outride Fund to fundraise and earn a matching grant to buy accessible bikes. So we have had some examples of that. The other thing that we hear is oftentimes it's those parents that are wanting to get their kids involved, and they will bring the accessible trike or whatever it is that they have from home, they will bring it to the school. And now once that kid outgrows that bike or matriculates up, that now is at the school for other kids who may have that challenge. So it's something where we encourage use of the Outride Fund to buy special equipment, not specialized equipment, to actually make the sport and our own programming more accessible than anything that we can do off the shelf. It's a hard thing because if we aren't there, we can't make those recommendations without knowing the kid. And also we aren't physical therapists. So using our funding to bring that in. The other thing, this year we've actually brought in a more diverse group of ambassadors. And one of the things, it's part of its representation that matters. But the other thing is we hope to be able to host some webinars with a US Paralympian ambassador and also new ambassador whose child, they have a trailer that they hook up to his tandem so that they can actually ride together. So we're hoping that we can host some more webinars like this, specifically to talk about how we make cycling more accessible for kids with unique abilities. But
Okay.
Outride Fund is one way of doing that.
Okay, yeah, and I'm really interested. You know, last year I was messing around with time trial with my guys because a lot of them can ride bikes without training wheels or anything. But I didn't really like, we're doing Special Olympics, and it's a little restrictive. And so we're looking to more at dirt access now and trying to turn them onto mountain biking now. And so we have some gentler trail systems. So it's definitely going to be something we're interested in trying to apply from that diversity angle to get our folks out there. So anyway, thanks for the info.
Yeah, happy to learn more from your application too. Let's see, I saw one question that popped up in the chat about the BAT, the biometric assessment technology. Is Esther still on here? Esther, you want to speak to that? I see you, Dr. Walker.
Yes, I did respond to that, and I believe I responded to Riley there that for most of our schools that are participating in Riding for Focus, we do standard program evaluation, meaning we do an anonymous pre and post survey for each of the students that participate to really track changes in their experience with cycling and their perceptions of schools, but also kind of their physical, mental, and social well-being as well. And so those are just the simple pre-post surveys. They're anonymous. They're all electronically run. For a subset of our schools who participate in the biometric assessment, they have the option to do heart rate tracking and run additional assessments as well. So that one's a little more intensive, and so we can't offer it to every school, but there are a handful of schools that we can onboard each year. And so typically that just depends on the length of the PE unit. If you only have 30 minutes, it's really hard to get all the kids set up to be able to do that. But we're always looking for ways to improve that and get more schools involved in learning more about heart rate if they want.
Thanks for addressing that, Esther.
You're welcome.
I'll just call it out here. I put it in the chat, but I think the summer round will likely, we haven't set dates for it yet, but it'll likely be a June, July application period for likely an August review and a September award notification for that next round. If you aren't subscribed to the newsletter, that's a great way about hearing about these grant opportunities, as well as other things that we put out there, like the research summit that Esther hosts and brings together. So sign up for that to always have sort of first access to calls for grants and other opportunities as we put together webinars to sort of build community.
I'm not sure if we've got new questions in there, but Megan and or Aline, what part of the matching part of the grant is confusing, just so that we answer the right question? If you're willing to give voice to it.
I think I was just trying to make sure I got it right. Like if I apply for we're a nonprofit and we want to engage more of our youth in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So if I apply for a grant, let's say for $10,000, then we sign up for Classy, we send all our supporters, put money there. So everybody, we were able to donate $10,000. So then you would, or like, let's say we match 5, then you would give us 5, correct? Am I getting it right?
Yeah, so we'll use that $10,000 example and I'll try to hit it quickly. Aline applies for a $10,000 matching grant, starts a Classy campaign, and she raises $11,000 or $10,000. You will then get your $10,000 plus the $10,000 matching grant that we committed to you. Let's say that we gave you the $10,000 matching grant that you asked for, but you only raised $5,000, and you're like, wow, we really need to do our programming. We would match what you raised up to that amount. So we won't go over that $10,000 if you raise $11,000. We aren't matching you to 11. We're matching you to 10 and then paying out your 11. So you're getting $21,000, if that makes sense. We don't do matching of in-kind. So we encourage in-kind, get that dirt donated for your pump track, get those bikes donated, but we're only matching cash grants. And again, Outride has to hold those dollars. So raised on Classy, or you or your donor submits an offline check made out to Outride with your organization Classy name in the memo. I go on to Classy and I apply that as an offline donation. The beautiful thing about that, there are no online transaction fees. Outride doesn't charge any handling fees or anything like that. Those funds are now match eligible from your bake sale, bike car wash, COVID vaccine distribution ploy. I don't know what you're doing.
Thank you.
Michaela, to answer your question about maintenance plan, it has been coming up more frequently. Our hope is that we can help foster or connect you to some local bike shops. We'd love to cultivate that relationship. Our grant doesn't include maintenance, and that's not a part of our curriculum. Although we are in conversation and have done some work with organizations like Project Bike Tech, we would just want to ensure that because youth are riding them, having like volunteers do your maintenance is not something that we regularly recommend, especially if they're heavy use. So our goal is to help foster connections between community organizations and local bike shops so that they will take an interest and continue to support you. We've also had programs and partnerships with projects in the Dene Navajo Reservation, for example, where there are no bike shops at all in 27,000 square miles. So we also try and identify if there are other places that we can connect to support that. And there's the project that we did support is actually providing a mobile bike unit that goes around and fixes bikes. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that in terms of maintenance, provided your kids aren't like super crazy tricksters or like a lot of overuse, what our Riding for Focus teachers have said is estimating about $25 per bike per year in terms of maintenance. It might be a little bit higher, might be a little bit lower, but just kind of incorporating that into your budget. But again, the idea is that if the bikes are being used for 10 years, it's a fairly modest investment for a high payoff.
And that also is so regionally dependent, whether you're riding them on salted, snowy roads or just literally having to wipe down some dust and things like that. Storage and in some cases, paying a mechanic to come out and visit the school and just do a once over once a year. That's a great way of doing preventative maintenance. All right, we've got, let's see, Garrett, you've got a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, it seems like a huge group of like-minded individuals here, and it's awesome to see everybody kind of wanting to improve youth cycling across the country. And I'm just curious, do you know if there's or do you guys have like a community forum, a Slack group or anything? If we wanted to continue the discussion among people in the group here later on, or ask other questions, get other pieces of advice, whatnot.
How about a no, but we love the idea. Sign up for that newsletter. And if and when we come up with a creative way of being that digital community, we would love to share out that. We love the idea.
Just quickly answering. So Daniel, for the Outride Fund, you have a year to raise your funds, and then we ask for an impact report before you're able to apply again. So there would not be the possibility of you applying for 2 concurrent Outride Fund grants.
One question that comes up frequently is, can my community apply for a Riding for Focus and an Outride Fund grant? Yes, we like to see that. We've got people on this call who started the other way. They got an Outride Fund to build the bike park, and now they're back applying for a school for that middle school that's next to it. So kind of build deeper and build those connections within your community. And again, sort of build up both sides.
And on that point, I know that we said that we'd have you out in an hour, but we do really want to help cultivate like thriving cycling ecosystems. So if you run a program or a project that's out of school, please forward this information on to schools. And if you're at a school and you know of after school programs or other projects, please forward that on. We know that, it's really difficult for one program to sustain interest. It's also why we've, supported programs like NICA to help cultivate some of those more competitive riders and things like that. So please help us spread the word. We'd really love to be able to support a wide range of programs. Not sure if I saw one last hand before we go. It's just a flash.
Jeffrey, we get your question, Jeff?
Sorry, I had the mute on. Yeah, I just had a quick question regarding the matching. As far as your goal setting, like, and what's actually matched, what's the drawback to saying I want to apply for like $100,000 and say I happen to raise 500, I'll still get matched that 500 versus saying I want to set my goal at 5,000 and I happen to raise that 500,000 or whatever. You know what I'm
I like
saying?
the ambitious thinking. One thing to stop you is our maximum match, our $15,000. We're still a relatively young organization with our unlimited capacity. I'm hoping someday that every major bike company is contributing to us and we can up that amount. So that's the first part. 2, we also work on the honor system. So we're hoping that because you're here to do the right thing, you're not going to say that you have a $100,000 project when your budget tells you that it's a $30,000 project. And 3, if you have a project that is that earth changing where $100,000 is going to make a huge impact, we're going to be excited to give that $15,000 and then give you the platform on Classy to go out and raise the other $85,000 so we can support you on your work in changing the lives there in your community.
Okay, follow-up question. Do you guys, when you received the inquiry for the grant or the matching funds, will you kind of regulate what that match will be? Say I do apply for $15,000 in matching, and you look at the project and you say, yeah, I mean, not on its the cost of the project, but more on maybe what other people are applying for relative to the funds you have the ability to match.
Yep. Typically, the way that this works is we will look at the amount of money that we have. So this last round, it was $250,000, $253,000. We did an honest blind review of the applications. We ranked them. Each one had a score based on their impact and the quality of their application. I then sorted them from highest scored to lowest, and then we started allocating money. And basically, when we ran out of money, we stopped giving awards. So
you won't.
There were some along the way where we said, we like the idea of this, but we don't think that we can invest $15,000 where it's currently at. We're going to offer them a $10,000 matching grant. And then we moved on to the next one. So we decide this is something we have to fund. Is the funding request fair or reasonable? Or do we think that this is a preliminary, let's get them started, do a partial match? We decide, and then we move on to the next one. So in some ways, we're balancing how much do we have to spend and what's the merit and impact of each applicant. And then we go through based on how sort of deserving they were in our committee's opinion, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you all for.
I have one more question. So the Ride for Focus, that's the application for now, and that would be a fall program.
That's right.
Is that what you said? And those timelines are on your website as well, I'm assuming.
Yes, and they're also in this deck, which will be available. There are actions to take before then, like grant agreements, program agreements, sending bikes out, getting a teacher trained. So there are action steps that lead up, but that's essentially for fall implementation. Thanks, everyone.